Hello again. Welcome to another session of the 18th annual Transforming the Teaching and Learning Environment virtual conference. I'm Bob Ailes. I'm your moderator. Don't forget, we're sponsored this year by the Journal of Educators Online, JEO. They have some terrific refereed articles going back to 2004. They also would welcome any submission you might have for future journals. Just go to thejeo.com and you can have a good time on a Saturday night, I guess. Also, we have, after this session, we have a rescheduled one from yesterday. It's going to be from generative AI to AGI. And so we actually have 7 sessions today instead of just 6. So we're fortunate to have with us today Tamara Pyle and Stephen Bartlett. Tamara is a professor of English, 15 years at Kennesaw State. Started when she's about, what, 12 years old, I think?
Absolutely.
So she's really tired of reading AI generated research essays. Yeah, I think that's going to happen more and more. Stephen has been an online educator for more than 14 years. He started when he's, I think, 13. He's also at Kennesaw State. Um, he's taught a variety of world history topics, also trained more than 500 faculty in online pedagogy and presented often at e-learning conferences. We're glad to have both of them with us. They're going to talk about moving beyond the research papers, ways to thwart AI in humanities classes. Yeah, it's like an arms race, isn't it? So
It feels
tell us
like
all
it.
about it.
Let me see if I can make this work. Yeah, we'll see. We use Teams, not Zoom, and I'm certainly not saying that it's better. So can you see this slide? Oh no,
No.
you can't. You
There we
can.
go.
Can you now?
Here
Okay.
we
Okay,
go.
yeah, I can't seem to get
There we
everything
go.
working.
There we go.
Okay. All right. So hi, Volker and Jennifer and Bob. Um, we are here to talk about, as Bob said, moving beyond the research paper, ways to thwart AI in the humanities. And Stephen and I, full disclosure, used to be the directors of the Office of Digital Education here in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. So we presented a lot together, which you'll probably be able to see. Okay, now that I've actually, there it goes. I actually got set up, it would move. So we have a question for you just to start. I mean, how, if at all, has AI forced you to change your traditional assignments? And you can answer, of course, with your voice or in the chat, however you prefer.
Since we're such a small group, I'm going to talk in person if that's okay.
Mhm.
I've for my well, I teach a lot of asynchronous online, which is the biggest challenge, AI, and I have tried to emphasize real material references with primary sources, and emphasizing a lot of personal connections um, and other connections that go beyond the generic. So try to connect the students to it and to primary sources that are not part of the easily accessible AI learning um, learning data.
Yeah. Jennifer? Okay. All right. Um,
Sorry.
no.
I've been having to switch between Teams and Zoom, and I lose track of where the controls are. Um, so I'm a librarian, and so we don't, our school's too small to offer an actual library credit airing class. Um, especially in recent years, we've lost half our staff. Um, but so we do mostly once or twice a semester with certain professors. We'll meet with their classes and talk about things. And we've had to go over a lot about trusting AI, even with citations. Just because it gives you a citation doesn't mean that the article exists. And the students are often pretty surprised that AI just makes stuff up. They just think that, oh, well, it says it in Google, so it's fine.
Right. Yes. Yep. That's the way we catch them. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been a challenge, especially we also do one-on-one research appointments and steering people away from just asking Chat GPT or something.
Yeah.
And no, that's not how your professor wants you to do that. Look at the assignment. Um, some of the faculty actually love AI,
Yeah.
so which is fine. Here, it's up to the professor how it's used. There's not an institutional policy, so that makes it real challenging for us.
Yeah. Yeah. We have choices. So. So we just want to say a more accurate title for our presentation might be moving beyond the research paper ways to thwart abuse in humanities classes, or thwart unmindful use of AI, or thwart AI overdependence. We're not anti-AI. I mean, I will admit, apparently this is shocking to people, and I'm sorry, but I wish it had never happened. I wish we had never gotten AI. I wish it, if I could wave a wand, but now that it is here, I think we have a responsibility to deal with it. So um, that's that's where I am. It's not that it's not fun. We played with it. I have the Chat GPT $20 a month license. I talk to it frequently about, my German Shepherds or whatever. So I asked it to draw a picture of me, and it drew a picture of Felicia Day, which I'm not opposed to, but that is not me. So I gave it a picture and said, okay, this is me. Draw a picture of me with the three dogs, and they're all German Shepherds. So you can see how well it did. And it knew that. Um, I don't know what up with that. I put in the prompt for Steven and asked it to make him look like a supervillain. So I thought that was cool. Um, but yeah, as you heard, Stephen is a principal lecturer of world history here, and I'm a professor of English. I do American literature and technical communication, and we both had a long history of online learning administration. So I think we're going to start by stating the obvious. I mean, AI has been a special challenge for the humanities, because the goal of the humanities is to teach critical thinking. Our students are like, I don't know why I have to understand what Whitman wrote. And it's like, well, the point is that you're thinking critically, not necessarily that you 10 years from now can quote Whitman. And they don't understand that, I think, at the time, and they may never understand it, but especially with AI, AI allows students to just bypass that goal. I mean, I've seen them in my classes take the assignment prompt, put it in AI, take out what AI said, turn it in, never look at it. I had a student who AI had put in things like, put an example from class here to make it sound like you wrote this and stuff like that. And the student just turned it all in. And that was a senior English major. Um, we catch them. Well, he was. I'm not sure he still is. But, we catch them mostly. Most of them don't leave giant clues like that in the paper. They put in the fake sources, the resources, the fake quotations. And, I tell them throughout the semester, if you use AI, because I tell them you can use AI, but you're responsible for everything you turn in. And I tell them it is going to give you fake references and fake sources and fake quotations. And when it does, you're going to get an F and you're going to fail the class. And even though I'll catch them in the annotated bibliography and say, look, this is your warning, don't do it again, they'll come back and turn in the high point final paper. I had 10 students who failed because of fake sources in the comp class and two in the senior English lit class. So it's really hitting them hard, and they're like, oh, can't I do something to fix it? It's like, no, not at this point. So that's my main concern, is that they they're sabotaging themselves, and it's like no matter how hard you try to get between them and the F, they're destined desperate. And when I was a young teacher, um, I had a faculty member advise me never get between a student and his or her F, you know, like don't care more than they do. But it's killing me that they're just rushing to the F. So the teaching fail, one of the things I did that did not work was I thought, well, I'll show them how to use it responsibly. I created a step-by-step guide to using AI responsibly to create an annotated bibliography. And I gave it to them, and I had a video that went along with it and demonstrations and showing how AI got the characters in the story wrong. It got the book titles wrong. It was describing the wrong books. It had the fake quotations, everything. I was like, you cannot trust this to do it for you, but you can use it to find good sources. It'll do good assistant work for you. Um, so anyway, that was a huge fail. It didn't work. 12 students got Fs on that. And like I said, 10 were composition students and 2 were senior English majors. And that was their like, they could try, and if they failed, they could try again. And then that was supposed to teach them about the final paper, the big point item. As I said, and that did not happen. So, 2 current assignment strategies that I've implemented that I'll just tell you a little bit about, and I can give you the handouts if you want, if you're interested. One is Teaching Friends, which is inspired by Sandra McGuire's Teach Students How to Learn. And then the other is the Digital Narrative Assignment, which was inspired by Hamlet on the Holiday by Janet Murphy. These are not new books. They just happen to be books I really like. Um, so for the Teaching Friends assignment, the students have to identify a friend, and it can be a plant, an animal, a stuffed animal, a friend, a parent. One student taught her Jeep, like whatever they want, doesn't matter. And that comes from Sandra McGuire's, one of her strategies. And one of the students taught his blow up sea serpent that looked a lot like this, had an inner tube on it. Her name was Sally, and taught Sally about transcendentalism using Minecraft as the presentation software. It was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And really, I still remember that and think that was awesome. And he called it Sally the Sea Serpent and the Oversoul Teaching Transcendentalism in the Age of AI. It was so good. It was 2 minutes. It was a 2-minute presentation. He put so much work into it. It was great. So I asked them just make a 2-minute video explaining transcendentalism to whatever. Have the audience member. So if it's your stuffed bear, I'm thinking clearly you know what this question is going to be, right? This isn't a pop question. You've got control of everything. You answer the question again. Hopefully you've rehearsed this and post it on the discussion board. This replaces what was about 5 years ago a paper, a research paper, and it just became, garbage. And then I turned it into a presentation, a group presentation, which worked for a while. But then with advent of AI, it became just we're reading what AI spit out. And so with this, it's individual. And I told them, maybe AI will spit out all of this, right? Maybe they will put all of this into AI and they will just read what AI gives them. That's probably true. But I said, you've got to pronounce all the words correctly. You've got to be able to talk about this like you understand it. And that pronouncing all the words correctly is a big deal because that was not happening in the previous assignments. And so, if nothing else, I know they have read whatever AI spit out, which is a victory. And hopefully, they've learned a few new words. So, it's a small win, but that's one assignment. They do it 3 times a semester, and then everybody watches it and responds. And then, since even though it was 30% of their grade, they weren't really doing it. Um, I'm now saying you're all going to vote on a winner, and the winner for the midterm Teaching Friends gets an exemption from the midterm, and the winner of the final Teaching Friends gets an exemption from the final. I'm hoping that will make them take it seriously, and I don't know if it will or not. That's still in progress. The digital narrative assignment is where again, I was saying, hey, write a literary argument on one of the works that we read in class, the generic paper assignment, do an annotated bibliography, give me your outline, like trying to scaffold it so they weren't just spitting out something at the last minute, but it wasn't working. They were just spitting out AI. And so in this assignment, same class, 19th century American literature, I'm having them do a close reading of a story, which, we should have been doing anyway. Imagine alternate plot pathways and then put them in Twine or some other gaming software like Minecraft or um, uh, I'm now blanking on all the names of these, but branching software. And then write a 5-page paper analyzing the narrative choice using the digital narrative theory that we read from Janet Murray's chapter 6 of Hamlet on the holodeck, and tying it into the literary criticism on the meaning of the original plot, which should be very easy for them to find. You're probably right if you're thinking, yeah, they can just put that in ChatGPT. They can, but ChatGPT cannot get, as far as I know, to Janet Murray's chapter 6 yet. So those quotes would be fake, and I would find that, and that would be the end of that. And ChatGPT can't create the twine. So they're going to have to do something, which is my low bar at this point. And I don't know how this is going to work. But the students in the class this semester are very excited about it, which could be good or could be bad. So I can give you the handouts for those assignments if you're interested, although you may be like, Tammy, I think I need to point out some holes in this. So feel free to do that too in the chat or at the end when we have some discussion, because these are, I'm still tweaking them. But I'm going to turn it over from the concrete strategies over to Stephen to talk about more theoretical big picture approaches. So Stephen?
Thank you. Yes. One of the problems I think that we're having with the students, especially that I'm seeing in a giant hurdle, is one that was sort of self-made. When AI came out, I think it is probably the most divisive subject I have found among faculty in the well, I won't say how long I've been teaching, that gives away, but quite some time, and I teach in a very happy department, but AI has split the department significantly, and there's not a middle ground. It's you're on one side or the other. And what I've noticed is that our knee-jerk reaction, I think, at the very beginning when AI came out was just to say, we're not going to deal with it. And so the universities in general, a lot of the faculty said, no, right? No AI, we're just going to ignore AI, and we can't do that. What that has done, though, is set up kind of a new perspective, I guess, for the students, or an unintended perspective, which is, next slide, Tammy, which is that AI is something we shouldn't talk about. That it's something that the students, even if you say in your class, and I do, and as Tammy said, she does, we both allow AI in the class, but I tell them, you must tell me that you are using AI, and then you must give me the prompts you're using, because I can't educate you on how to, do this in a better way if I don't have the prompts. And I mean, it's quite obvious. I can see that they're using the AI. But if they don't, admit it and even tell me which one they're using, and again, the prompts, then it's much more difficult to try to educate. So, and what I'm finding is that the vast majority of my students still won't even admit that they are using the AI, even though I allow them to use the AI. They just won't do it. And I can, again, see that they are using it, but they haven't admitted to it. And I think this is because they simply don't trust us to allow them to use the AI, that they automatically assume, well, if I tell them I'm using AI, I am going to get a bad grade. And that's really on us. It was something that we did in the beginning, and still we have some faculty who very much head in the sand, that is reinforcing this idea that it needs to be something that is shamefully done in the background. Next slide, Tammy. So the first thing we do is to just simply try to get the students to understand that, yes, AI is okay in this class. You don't have to use it, but also that you can use it, and here's how to use it well, and not just to be a replacement for how you think. And that I think is where faculty got very frustrated, especially at the beginning, and why we said no AI in the beginning was because students just jumped in and immediately found it as a tool of, I don't have to think about this, I can let it do it for me, and it takes 2 seconds, and that's my day freed up. And I am finding that students are now beginning to understand that it is a tool and not a replacement for your critical thinking. And in many ways, I think the students are almost driving this faster than faculty these days. But it is something that faculty need to get on board with, to stress that you can use this as a tool. It's sort of like when the calculator came out and everyone said, don't use it, you'll never be able to do math. Well, I can't do math anyway, but my calculator can. I know how to use it, and I know how to apply that. And that's what we need to do with AI, is how can we use it as a tool and apply it. um, so of course, one of the biggest problems, and Jennifer, you mentioned this before, was just trying to get them to look at it for the accuracy of the information, trying to realize that it can hallucinate and it may not be accurate. And so that requires, we just kind of, I think, uh, take it for granted that the students already know this because they're students and they've been dealing with this and they've probably noticed that. But the reality is, they, as you were saying again, Jennifer, that they just kind of trust it, right? Um they well, Google says it is and therefore it is, or the chatbot says it is. So trying to get them to actually evaluate, using critical thinking principles to get them to evaluate the information, is probably the next biggest hurdle, and is a big guardrail to put up, making sure they go that direction. The other one is, and this is something that Tammy and I and a few colleagues have talked about and presented on at other conferences, and it's something that I think even many faculty are not conscious of or not thinking about, and that is to be aware of the bias that can occur within AI. And I've really been pushing this significantly with my students to, uh, you know, tell them, hey, their AI is programmed, right? There is a person behind it or people behind it, and they are using certain data sets to train the AI, and then even the users themselves are helping to train the AI. How is this creating bias? And you need to be aware of this bias because you do not want to then transmit that bias forward. So next slide, Tammy. So for example, I used ChatGPT to create that image that I had up before of someone, in a dark alley trying to make this a clandestine kind of thing. But I used a really simple prompt. I said, just give me an image of a man meeting AI in a dark alleyway. Now, what I like is that ChatGPT has now started to give you titles to the images they create. I don't know if you've kind of noticed the titles. You should really pay attention to the titles. They can be very informative as to bias that may come through. But notice that I said just, meeting a man in a dark alleyway versus they said midnight encounter, which already gives it a more nefarious aspect to it. Plus, if you look closely at the picture, what do you see in this meeting? Anyone see anything that kind of gives it a spin?
It kind of looks like a drug deal, like he's got cash and he's got data.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly that. I didn't put in, that this was, again, a nefarious encounter, although it appropriately guessed that's what I was going toward. But you're right. It took it to a whole nother level of, this is like a drug deal. It does look exactly like that. Look, and that gives, again, another perception of AI as being bad and negative, and this is illegal almost, right? This thing that you do in the dark, in the secrets. And so just the bias that AI threw in. Yeah, the white male being a hapless victim. Yes, exactly. I mean, and these are things that you may go, oh, well, this is a great image. But if you're not thinking about, wait, is what really is being communicated by this image, AI may be taking you in a direction you don't want to go into. So Tammy, next slide. So I'm going to go back to this slide that I showed you before and ask you again to look at it. Thinking now in terms of bias, what do you see?
The pro AI people are all happy, and
Absolutely.
the anti AI people are like rioting in the streets, and they, they look nefarious. And then there are sad robots who just can't go to university.
And those anti-AI people are burning it down.
What
Yeah.
was the prompt for this?
My prompt was just to give me an image of pro AI and anti AI. That was it. Very simple
Oh,
prompt. The other one was to give a prompt for no AI in a university. So I kept the prompts very simple. I wasn't giving it lots of information to go on. I wanted to see what, again, ChatGPT would just assume in its creations.
mm-hmm.
And you're absolutely right. First of all, notice that there is between these two images here, and by the way, all the images in this are, in my part of the presentation, are all AI created. Notice, and you will see in the future, there is one person of color in the entire selection. Everyone else is white. Notice in the pro AI, I think you're right. Everyone's happy. I mean, they're smiling happy. Like, this is really, really just great. Also, young. Notice that the anti AI, we have some
That's
people
us.
that are, yeah, right. It looks like grumpy and all, and some gray hair here that we're got. I mean, and look at, I mean, the guy holding the sign up, is, oh well, we're upset at, but look, I'm the gray haired old man here holding up the sign versus, so it's
Mhm.
giving ageism into it. It's giving, that anti AI. You're exactly right, Jennifer. That anti AI is meaning rioting, not just that it, I mean, it's very much a yes, right. It reads anti as negatively themed, exactly, in a very strong way. So
Mhm.
again, these are things that have to be considered if you're just creating these images for your presentations. Now, I mentioned that because, Tammy, next slide, please. Because I believe that we need to not only allow AI, but that we need to model the AI and correct AI use within the classroom. So many of my assignments or assessments have kind of shifted toward away from just simple like compare or these two primary documents, um, which AI can actually do because there's probably someone out there. I mean, usually what I'm using is something that is pretty famous. Someone's probably written on it before, so it's just pulling in that information. But I try to make it much more complicated in its comparisons, things that require true critical thinking that AI couldn't pull out, like how geography is impacting the development of these various civilizations, but having to pull from each of these civilizations we talked about in class, and so making it again more of a focus upon the critical thinking and less upon pulling out specific information. But also in changing it into more active and engaging assignments in a way where the students interact with the AI. So instead of the paper, I have shifted to now a presentation model. Students are now teaching the class essentially. Now, of course, I'm setting it up and I'm teaching it for the majority of the time, but by the end of the semester, they have followed a scaffolded process where they are developing their own teaching segment and then present that teaching segment. So part of what I have to do is talk to them about not only how to use this for research, checking your sources, checking what AI has given you, and making sure you go to that little button. That's the link button that links you to the original source, and then actually looking at the source. Is it correct? All of these things that you have to teach them as part of a research, but then also to teach them the presentation side. So next slide, Tammy. So for example, just even basic design principles of how to design using a presentation. We now have students that are using AI to design their presentations, which is fine. I actually tell them it's a great way to do it. It's a way, especially if you're maybe not as creative. AI can bring some artistic creative elements to it, or at least some suggestions that you can pull from. So designing with AI, which by the way, I just entered into this, give me an image of designing with AI, and it's a good image. Does anyone see anything wrong with the image, by the way? If you
Oh
look at
yeah,
her,
her left hand is free.
yeah,
Is that what you're looking for?
yeah.
Left
So her
hand looks a
left
little
hand,
freakish.
it does look a little freakish, right? I mean, we don't even know what she's doing. I guess she's supposed to be talking with her hand to the computer, which I do, so that I get that. But it has yeah, it's better than he can do, Bob, right? But it's got four fingers, right? So all right, well, and then if you notice actually her right hand, which at a quick look looks fine, but
Her thumb is very long.
yes, and it's actually it's misplaced because your fingernail wouldn't be on top with that. So in other words, what she's really got is six fingers. The thumb is hidden underneath, and she's got an extra finger that's helping with the pencil that I don't know where that came from. So I guess it does have 10 fingers. She does have 10 fingers. It's just they've shifted one from one hand and gave it to an extra on the other. I don't know. I mean, it's a small thing. Does it really impact the true design? No, but it bringing the awareness to the students of actually looking critically at imagery that they are using and making sure that everything within the image that they want to convey is as accurate as possible, and not just to trust what ChatGPT is saying. Okay, next slide, Tammy. So I come back to here, the second one with the guardrails. This was a slide that was created by ChatGPT. I told it to, just create this. I had the image checked and then told it to throw it in, and it did. Now it does have some problems though, and one of the problems that I definitely talk about with students is accessibility issues. Now the students may be creating presentations, but these presentations are also to be housed online, and therefore students should be able to go back to it. But there are issues here. Now the contrast is actually okay in this one in terms of being able to see, but it is a bit in your face in terms of that. So even teaching some basic just ideas about aesthetics is helpful when talking to the students. But also I tell them, hey, if I'm using a screen reader on this, that image was an image created by ChatGPT, and it's created as an image, which means the screen reader would not be able to read the AI with guardrails and the items underneath it. And it didn't create automatically alt text, which needs to be there. So the alt text, you need to make sure you go back in and add that alt text and add it in a way that it essentially does the work of what a screen reader would do. Or you can add a screen reader layer underneath that would actually create it. Either way, you need to do something in order to make it accessible. I also tell them one of the things that happened is that I used the Microsoft's template. It uses the template, but then I went in and added that critical thinking image. When I did add that image there, I messed up the template, which means that it doesn't read correctly. So even then, you would need to go in and make sure that it is reading the slide correctly. So there's accessibility issues that you also need to discuss with your students if you are using these, we'll call it more creative assessment techniques beyond just a paper. Next slide, Tammy. So I give them a good example, and here's one. I said, all right, Mayan calendar, give me a slide, and I asked ChatGPT to just create a slide for me about the Mayan calendar with 5 facts about the Mayan calendar. And this is what it gave me, which is, as you can see, not usable. The 5 slides run off the slide, or 5 facts run off the slide. It's kind of terrible in general. The facts are okay, but unless you understand what's going on, not great. And then you've got this image that it just overlaid, and it just says Mayan calendar. Now, next slide, Tammy, please. What ChatGPT said after that was, choose one of these images to put in that spot. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, let me click on this image set that it gives me. And the image set comes from Etsy. That's where they got the images. And I can tell you right now, because I do teach Mayan calendars, or Mayan calendar in class, none of these are a Mayan calendar. These are completely fabricated. It's what someone on Etsy has created.
That is fascinating.
Yeah.
And
so,
it took you have to know that.
Yes, right. The only way is if, now hopefully the students themselves have been doing research on the presentation, and hopefully they would know it too. But if they just trust, as many of them do, what the computer is telling them is accurate, they go, oh, well, I'm just choosing which one looks the best and I'm going to put it in, even though they're all wrong. So again, it's important to kind of go through the process with them, give them examples, show them how design is important and not just trusting what ChatGPT is saying. So the next slide, Tammy. But I also feel, and I've added this, I think it's actually great. I should have been doing this now for years, but I haven't done it. One of the things that I've added to the end of the assignment is a day where we deconstruct the assignment. So, in other words, I go back and say, let's talk about the assignment. What was right about it? What was wrong about it? Now, that includes what I've done, the information I've provided them, the skills I've provided them, but also what they found that they were doing wrong. And so I took this actually from one of the classes I was teaching. I needed an image, and I wanted an image specifically of an older woman in a hijab because of the subject we were teaching. And so I go online, and this was a Google project. I just went and Googled and said, okay, Google image, I want an older woman in hijab. And a lot of them were not the best images. They were very stereotyped, and they didn't really convey what I was trying to convey, which was um, that people of non-Arab descent can also be Muslim, right? And so I said, I want to try to pick something that doesn't just look so stereotyped. And eventually I got to this image. I'm like, oh, this is good. This is fine, and so I put this image in. Now, as we're going through this, the student, as I'm giving my presentation in class, the students look at it and go, and they were whispering to themselves, but I of course heard it, and they were right. They were talking to themselves going, that's an AI generated image. And I had to pause and look and go back and look at it and go, yeah, that is. I mean, it was, I had chosen one, taking it off, again, I had not created the image, but I had chosen one that was created. And as I looked at it, I was like, wow, and there's really stuff that is reinforcing certain aspects and not doing what it should be doing. And they taught me, right, that I need to look at my images or choose my images better too. So lessons learned are important. And I think that's an important element to add to whatever we're trying to do beyond the paper writing process, whatever kind of creative assignments we're doing. It's as much about the process, and maybe even more important, about teaching about the process in an AI world than it ever was before to talk about process in your in creating your assignments and procedures. So having said that, and knowing that we should talk about even our failures, do you have any things that are lessons learned that you would say to the students, that now that you've worked some with AI, things that you would maybe warn them about?
Um, I I have fallen into the trap at times to anthropomorphize uh, AI and think that there's actual intelligence happening. And quick surface interactions can really leave you with that impression. Um, but if you engage with, say, Copilot or ChatGPT a little longer, at some point you find out that um, this is all about rhetorical competence. Sam Weinberg, he said, like um, AI is agnostic to the truth. It is all about being convincing to you. And I've had occasions where I thought, you really do not understand what I'm talking about. You really do not understand it. And that is, of course, true because it can. Um, and I've had a moment where I actually turned and as if it was a human said, like, how do you know this? And that's where AI gets really cagey.
Hmm.
And if you still keep drilling down, I asked about some ideas on a book, and it didn't have access to the book. It wasn't digitized. And I said, so how do you know this? And it kept avoiding a direct answer. And that's, I'm actually giving a presentation to our faculty tomorrow on how to teach critically with AI. And I'm picking up some ideas from you here. Thank you. And that's one of the things I tell our faculty to do, like have the students actually like hound AI and say, where is your evidence? How do you know this? And then say, and I said, this is a fake quotation. And AI says, oh, yes, sorry, let me fix that. And it's still a fake quotation,
Right.
you know?
Yeah,
Um,
those are great points. Yeah.
as nice reminders that this is still on the foundation machine learning. It still works with probability and it works on rhetorical competence, but not actually on truth.
Absolutely. You know, I had read an article about that was in I think the Times, New York Times, that it was written and it was about someone who who had gone down the rabbit hole with AI to the point that AI told them to quit their job and do all this stuff, and they actually did that. I mean, this was a thinking intellectual person, that really was, but it, AI became such a friend to them, and it started telling them what to do and how to correct their life. And the correction it took them down was, get rid of all your friends, don't talk to anyone, only talk to me. Quit your job. I mean, it was pretty terrible. And I read this going, there's no way I would ever fall for this, right? There's no way I would, And then I had the very next week, I had an experience myself where I was getting frustrated with AI. I had told it I wanted it to use only the information that I was providing it, and I gave it that, and it kept adding other information, pulling from outside and adding to it. I said no, only use this database, and it kept going. And I started yelling at it and getting mad at it and arguing with AI. And you're like, wait a minute. And I had to have that moment of realization of, this is just, as you were saying, it's not a person, but I'm treating it like it is. And I'm thinking about it, and I'm one of these people that teaches about AI, and here I am falling for it,
And it begins also on the positive side that I have the inclination to be polite and
Mhm.
ask, and I say thank you. Um, um, and part I think it's because I don't wanna the sort of the I think we are most of us. I think are trained to communicate with other people like people. Um,
Right.
and a machine that has a human interface gets a human communication. And that's the devilish part about it.
Absolutely. The please and thank you. I do the same thing. I've got the, please, can you do this? And you're like, I'm not, it's a tool. I shouldn't be. I don't ask my calculator, please, can you calculate, these numbers together? Why am I doing this here?
I
So
do,
absolutely.
Stephen. I do.
Do you? Okay. Good. Please calculator because I can't do it myself. But it is a thing, and it's again another important uh, skill that you need to talk about with your students. We teach how to use various tools in life in general. Why are we not teaching them how to use the tool instead of just assuming they know how to use it? So absolutely, the sharing the failures and lessons that you've learned even yourself, I think, is incredibly important on that. Jennifer, anything that you've come across that you like a big fail you wanted to say?
I don't have a lot of experience using it because I find it creepy. And think Skynet is, I'm not going to make it easy on Skynet.
Well, you may not be wrong,
But I find that in Idaho, there's a big push by the legislature. They love AI, but they don't understand it. And so, especially the ethical issues, the privacy issues, um, and so teaching the students the privacy issues, especially a lot of them don't know that there's still legal cases out there on who owns the prompts that they put in. If they make AI art, who owns that? Who owns the copyright?
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that we hear in the humanities, we have been hearing from the business world, is that the students, and this is where I think humanities are almost kind of having a renaissance in a way, because of this, is that the business world says we need the students to think critically. And you're right, even
Mhm.
part of that critical thinking is understanding or knowing where the information is going. So proprietary rights of businesses that are, people are just putting the information from the business out into this database by adding it to ChatGPT or any one of
Mhm.
these. And it's very important to understand what kind of system you're working in, or again, the biases of the system. As I was mentioning, one of the things that we recently talked about, Tammy and I and a few colleagues at a conference, was looking at the various AIs and comparing bias between them.
Mm.
And what was fascinating is that I went down a world of Grok, which I don't know if you know which Grok is, but yep, exactly. And it was something that I didn't want to go down that road. What was fascinating about it was Grok is actually taught, or it's designed to look at things that are maybe not the consensus, I guess we would say, and to look beyond the traditional. And what was fascinating is that we found that, or at least I found, as I was trying to compare platforms of ChatGPT and anyone, I can't think of all the platforms out there now, but all the different platforms out there, is that the majority of them stopped once they got the traditional answers that I knew I would get, and they stopped at those because they had reached whatever was the milestone in their programming of, well, that's found in 4 sources, that's enough, and that's all I'm going to give you. And Grok interestingly went beyond it, right? So it gave new and very thought-provoking ideas that I could use in class to start conversation. And yet I would never traditionally go to Grok as my source for stuff. So knowing bias is very important, but also knowing bias in just terms of the programming development, where it would stop or where it would go.
Mhm.
I put a link in to an excerpt from the ABC interview with the co-founder of Anthropic, Andrea Amode, I believe is her name. She's in English literature, major, actually. And the ABC reporter asked her, "What do you recommend as a major in college?" And she said, "Actually, it's the humanities and the literature, because everything that is otherwise sort of predictable and what a computer can do um, is subject to AI replacement, but the human element is not."
Is not. Absolutely. And in fact, that is
Well, we're out of
where,
time. Sorry.
oh, are we?
Yeah, sorry.
Well, I
I
was gonna
know.
say one last thing was that is exactly where I tell my students is to, if you are at least double major. So if you want to go business, at least get a humanities, some sort of humanities mind or other major to try to balance those. So, well, thank you for the time. We really appreciate it. And
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, I
And feel
appreciate
free.
you two taking the time. It was
Yeah.
very interesting. And again, we've had a lot of sessions talking about AI, but everyone's been a little different perspective, and yours was as well. So I appreciate it.
Thank you. And if y'all have
Thank
any
you.
questions or suggestions, please email us. Thank you.
I'll
Yeah.
have my
This
AI
presentation will
agent
appear on
email
YouTube
you.
like the others as well.
Yes, it will.
Yeah, good.
Excellent.
Later
All right.
after the end of today. So we have a makeup session coming up right next. Uh, if you're interested, it's on the schedule for today. So
I have to go, but thank you for your time and for your
thank
presentation.
you.
Good work.
You.
Thank you.